Permaculture is a design system. It's not a technique or a set of techniques. When I'm teaching it, I tell people I'm not here to teach you how to do things. I'm here to teach you how to think about doing things. It's how to select the appropriate response for any given condition. So one of my favorite permaculture writers, authors, is a gentleman living in Scotland named Graham Bell. And he described, I'm paraphrasing, but he described permaculture very simply as a way of arranging your life to be healthy and abundant without doing harm anywhere else. I love that because it's beautiful. In the beginning, bands of hunter-gatherers roamed around, and they worked together until they discovered agriculture. Then some of them settled down. But in both cases, their lives were very labor-intensive. And they continued in that fashion one way or another. They developed a lot of skills in terms of growing their own food, domesticating animals and plants in order to feed themselves and their families. That continued pretty much up until the Industrial Revolution. With the technological developments that enabled people to begin exploiting energy sources. We still, unfortunately, call that cheap energy. There's nothing really cheap about it. However, we shifted from a labor-intensive culture or world of cultures into an energy-intensive world. So we've been consuming all of that so-called cheap energy, and now we're beginning to pay the cost. On the one very tangible, visible side, we have the West Coast burning up. Australia burns up. Wildfires everywhere. Climate chaos. 5 hurricanes at a time in the Gulf of Mexico. There's probably no question that all of this is a byproduct of our energy consumption. Another long-term negative effect is that most of us have lost touch with our surroundings. We don't know where we live, and we have lost skills. They have not been passed down. How do you do basic things to take care of yourself? Most people don't have a clue. The knowledge is there, and there are still a handful of people with all of these skills. But what we have to do is to re-educate ourselves, kind of reconnect ourselves. the term disconnect keeps coming up, you know, and so part of what permaculture addresses is how do we reconnect ourselves. That means you have to become aware you are. Okay, so if we are to get out of this energy collapse, environmental collapse that's being caused by the energy consumption, we have to graduate and move on to a design-intensive culture. The origins of permaculture itself, it's back in the late 1970s, a fellow named Bill Mollison, who was the kind of charismatic, blustery, iconoclast, brilliant guy from Australia who had been an ecologist working out in the field, in the bush, and studying, and he became totally frustrated with protesting injustice and our warlike nature. And these economies based upon exploitation and consumption and destruction of entire environments. And so he developed a system along with one of his students, another brilliant young man named David Holmgren. And they were the ones who assembled the entire kind of basic design system and process. They named it permaculture as a conflation of permanent agriculture. Initially, the design system was oriented toward farms, toward shifting farms from industrial agriculture back into kind of larger scale working farms. But they soon came to realize that there's no permanent culture itself without a permanent agriculture. In other words, if we can't feed ourselves, then we can't have peaceful assembly and live peacefully in community. And so it broadened its scope. And as it has been practiced, and it has gone through an evolution right up to the present. So when we talk about design systems, when we talk about the word design, most people think of two aspects of design: aesthetics and function. There is absolutely nothing wrong with beauty, but we should not seek beauty at the expense of function. And so health and balance are the goals. Permaculture as a design system differs from most other approaches in that it focuses on the functions. That is, the meaningful, useful exchanges between all of the elements within any given system. It also differs, and this was one of the most important developments of the design system, in that they came up with 3 ethics to use as filters. Anytime the designer did anything, it had to pass through all 3 of these filters. So The first is care for the earth. So when you say care for the earth, it shifts the focus. It's talking about caring down here, a heart emotion. It means that you recognize and respect and love the earth and all earthen systems, all natural systems. The first, I would say, most important tool in our toolkit is long and thoughtful observation. Just pay attention, absorb things without preconceptions, if that's possible. The second ethic is care for people. That means individuals, but other cultures too. However they choose to group and express themselves. Care for that, respect it, learn from it. When I teach this, invariably there will be somebody who says, why don't people come first? That's very simple. We're the new kids on the block. Evolution happened for a very long time before we even showed up. That's why. The third one, and I personally feel that this is what they're all important, but this one has been betrayed to a large extent. It was originally formulated as kind of a two-part ethic, two sides of the same coin, if you will. Set limits to growth and consumption and share any surplus. That one has been watered down in contemporary permaculture teaching to just fair share, as if that meant anything. It sounds nice, but it doesn't mean anything. Setting limits to growth is essential. Figuring out how much is enough is a fundamental human obligation. All indigenous cultures would teach that as part of their cultural understanding. We don't teach that. In fact, our entire economy is based on growth, which is why we're running into problems. Sorry, that's the way. I have to cut a new path out here. One of my student friends and I are going to take, this was the base of one of those things. We're going to kind of lash it together with yarn and fabric and strengthen it and put it up as a sculpture for the four directions going over there.
Oh, cool.
She's the one who helped me, and we did the ribbons.